Hello and welcome to the Smart Divorce podcast. Something a little bit different today. I am really pleased to be joined by my guest Rachel today. We are keeping her relatively anonymous for the reason that she's been kind and brave enough to come on to talk to us about her experiences of domestic abuse today, to kickstart our latest series, which will all be covering domestic abuse. So Rachel is 52 years old. She was in a relationship for 24 years with her ex. 14 of those were in a civil partnership. They have a 10-year-old son together who was birthed by Rachel's ex. However, Rachel was the main carer for the majority of her son's life or their son's life. And so either during that time didn't work or was working part-time. So has been not the financial breadwinner. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's nice to be able to contribute.
Absolutely, no, it's really appreciated. So can you tell us when you first realised that you were being subjected to domestic abuse? Because it's often a kind of creeps up on you and isn't necessarily out there and obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably was a bit slow to the party because I didn't really realise that something was quite significantly wrong until the day after my ex-partner ended the marriage. So 24 years in, my ex-partner ended the marriage and just kept saying the marriage is over. And then her behaviour just was so peculiar that I couldn't make sense of what was happening. And I thought, what on earth is going on? This doesn't feel normal. I knew that my body just thought, what is going on? Because she behaved as though she had just cancelled a newspaper subscription. And this was after 24 years of marriage. And she was very calm and very kind of collected and ruthless. I mean, when I look, it's very difficult because I look back now with a different lens to how I felt then. But at the time, I thought something sinister is going on, and this word "sinister" kept popping into my head, and I very quickly went to see my GP because my marriage had ended. I had to call in sick with my employer, and I knew that I would need a sick note because I knew that this wasn't going to be just a 3 days off work situation. So I went to talk to my GP, and my GP said, and this was in the first 2 days of the marriage ending, my GP said, I think you need to call the domestic abuse helpline, because I described the sort of behaviours that my ex was exhibiting, and that was a total shock. But I trusted my GP and I respected her. And I called the domestic abuse helpline, the national one, and they said, yes, you're being subjected to coercive, controlling and emotional and psychological abuse. And that was the very start of it. And that was in November 2023. And it's 8 months in, and I've been on this really horrendous journey that I'm now sort of dealing with the loss of the marriage, the loss of what actually I thought I was in, that was completely fabricated, and all of that sort of sudden awareness has been a real reveal moment, which has been really horrible. So yeah, I didn't know at the time. At the time, throughout the relationship, we had ups and downs, and I just thought that they were sort of the ups and downs that other marriages had. I wasn't brought up knowing about coercive control or that sort of abuse. Domestic abuse to me was very much man hits woman, that kind of traditional, sort of sadly traditional idea. And so I wasn't looking for the signs of a female perpetrator of domestic abuse carrying that out on me. I thought that I would have noticed that. So yeah, it took me after to the end of the marriage to notice, and from my experience with domestic abuse agencies, that's quite a common occurrence in the sort of situation where you've got this insidious psychological and emotional coercive control. It's just by very, very slow degrees that it ramps up. And then, yeah, as soon as the marriage ended, she was just quite, I would say, overtly controlling, overtly psychologically damaging, and overtly emotionally abusive. It was just very overt. It's almost like she couldn't pretend anymore that she didn't want to hurt me. She actively wanted to hurt me and actively wanted to do these things and was no longer pretending. And that was the sudden realization.
That just heartbreaking, but not surprising, because I think a lot of clients that I work with are similarly unaware until somebody says to them post separation, actually, are you aware that that sounds like domestic abuse? And I think we were brought up in a generation where we weren't aware of coercive control, and it almost, that wasn't a phrase that was ever used, probably until relatively recently. I think certainly in the kind of general public. In terms of when you look back on the relationship, can you pinpoint a time that this began, or does it feel like it was something that was creeping up on you kind of under the radar from day one almost?
It was certainly creeping under the radar from day one, but actually from day one there were red flags, and so
Yeah.
part of this sort of this journey that I've been on has rendered me quite isolated from long-term friendships, and in some way I feel quite a burden of responsibility that I've allowed that to happen. I could have stayed in touch with old friends, but I didn't, and I realized that that was part and parcel of being made to feel I didn't need anybody else. My ex-partner never said, you can't see that person apart from one person. So in the isolation that gradually grew, I wasn't able to or I didn't say to people, do you think this is normal? Do you think this behavior is kind of okay? And so the behaviors that my ex exhibited at the very beginning of our relationship were typical of abusive people. And having got back in touch with those old friends that saw us at the beginning of our relationship, one of my good friends said, you were predated. And she used the word predated in terms of my ex-partner being predatory towards me and marking me out as, somebody that she was going to get. And I took that in my, working through all of the work that I'm doing now with the various different abuse agencies. I'm doing my own work on myself and starting to understand what that predatory sensation was for me. I thought that it was love. I thought that I was being kind of overwhelmed by this love. I didn't know what love bombing was at the time, but I was certainly love bombed. There was lots of attention, lots of gifts, lots of adoration, and it was highly, highly addictive to me, having maybe not experienced that very much in my childhood. And so, I realized that there are patterns within that abusive, those abusive traits that I was willingly accepting, because that's what I was used to, and so it didn't seem unfamiliar to me. But there were red flags then. There was infidelity fairly early on, and I just sort of thought, well, I have to kind of not necessarily put up with it, but work through it. That this is part and parcel of relationships, and relationships are not always easy, and it was my job to try to make it work. And so, yeah, the sort of insidious creep of the relationship and in the coercive sense, I didn't want to buy a house together, but was coerced into buying a house together. We lived in London for a while. I really didn't want to do that, and my ex-partner made lots of fun of me and said, "Oh, you're just a commitment phobe, and you don't want to do it because you're a commitment phobe," and would say that in front of her family to make me feel stupid and that I was missing out somehow on getting on the housing ladder. I then didn't want to get civilly partnered, but again, she made comments about, well, you're just a commitment phobe, and would say it in front of her family and friends, and always passed all of these nasty comments off as a joke. And so we bought a house, and then we got civilly partnered. And so, and I now realize that part of that coercive control is about binding you to that individual, that they get you bound. And so I was, financially bound with a house. I then became legally bound to her, and then she coerced me into us having a baby together. And I had anybody that knows me had always known that I didn't really want to have children, not because I don't like them, but because I just didn't feel that was something that I wanted to do. But she coerced me into saying, well, this is my body. You can't stop me from wanting a child. I've wanted a child since I was 12. It's my womb. And kind of went down the route of, I'm an independent woman. You can't, as another woman, tell me what to do with my womb. And I was very conscious of not wanting to limit her ability to have a baby, but I was in love, and I thought, we're married, okay, I have to go along with this because we're married, and I've made this commitment. And I'm of the opinion that once you make a commitment, that's it, you do stick. And so anyway, then we ended up on the journey of IVF, and she got pregnant, and we had our child in 2013. And so yes, there was a very slow, insidious, creeping build of this coercive control, and peppered within these big life events like buying a house and getting married. She was dealing with things like the finances, saying that she wanted to do it, she liked it. She would always have spreadsheets. She organised mortgages. She organised car insurances, things like that. And it was always a case of, no, let me do that because I like doing it and I'm good at it. And all the while, very slowly, when I look back, my self-esteem was just getting lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And I just started to feel worse about myself. And I just thought, and she would sort of say, well, I think you need to go and see a therapist. So I would go and see a therapist, and I would get help for me to try to figure out what was wrong with me. And that was, yeah, that was kind of, I suppose that's the slow creep of that kind of power play, really. Ultimately, it was power play, that I didn't know that I was being played that game.
Wow. How are you feeling now about what you've been through, and how do you feel about the relationship now, kind of looking back on it?
It's easier to answer the second question. When I look back on the relationship, I feel that I was with a con woman, like the old school con person, that none of it's real. It's all totally false. The only stuff that was real were my feelings of love and commitment. And so I have nothing to cling on to about the relationship. It was all fake. And so I'm dealing with a lot of grief for the relationship that wasn't, grief of not now being in love with the person I thought was there. And so, and I feel hugely betrayed, and pretty stupid as well, that those feelings are quite messy. And in terms of how it's left me feeling, just me as an individual, I feel sort of, up until quite recently, I've been feeling fairly scraped out. I used the phrase eviscerated when I was describing how I felt on this sort of, the culmination of this of 24 years, and then the culmination of the post-separation abuse, which is continuing. I just feel like I've been eviscerated. And I liken it to, sadly, when bodies go in to be embalmed. I watched a program a long time ago about embalming, and I feel like I've been embalmed emotionally to just this husk. And so now I'm trying to build up who I am, and that's going to be an ongoing, lifelong process, I suspect. Yeah, it's been very hard, and I've needed to get support from mental health charity, mental health body in my area where I live, and different domestic abuse agencies. So I'm fortunate in that I've known where to look, and I've been signposted in the right places. But that doesn't help me at sort of 3-4 o'clock in the morning when I'm, can't sleep, and I have nightmares, and I've been an insomniac since November, and physically it's had a massive negative impact on me.
I mean, I can't imagine what you're going through. I'm not gonna pretend that I can, but the words that you use to describe it are very, very visual words, and I mean, unbelievable. That somebody could behave to somebody else like this. Look, this might be a really difficult question to answer, but looking back, if you had been aware of coercive control, of domestic abuse not being necessarily man hits woman, etc., do you think that you would have picked up on it earlier, or was it so subtle, the creep, that you think that actually it's just impossible to pick up on it?
It is difficult to answer that, because I think in order to know that something is wrong and coercive and abusive, the part of one's brain that is told something but witnesses something different. So her words were A, but her actions were B. I would have had to have been able to notice that what I was feeling in my body was the truth, and that what she was saying was not the truth. And so, yes, if I'd come across the term and I had friends that had saying this is coercive control, maybe that might have sparked something in me. But that cognitive dissonance that one feels when she had an affair, didn't tell me about it for 2 years, and then told me about it just after both my grandparents had died, at a time when I was emotionally very vulnerable. When she was telling me that I love you, I love you, I love you, and the golden period of that love bombing comes back in such an intense way, I don't know that I would have had the sort of emotional intelligence to have said to myself, she's saying all this stuff and she's showing love momentarily, but actually what her actions have been is this. So I don't know. In an ideal world, I would have had the self-compassion and the emotional intelligence to have been able to pick that up. But honestly, I don't think I would have done. I think I was too enmeshed emotionally in that in love feeling, and believing what she was saying, believing that she was my soulmate. She'd never met anybody like me. I was the one for her. She'd always loved me. She would always love me. All of those kind of very magic thinking, future faking phrases that I heard all the time, except for when she was devaluing me. I think that would have been it's just such too big a contrast. Well, it was for me anyway, for my little brain to cognitively process. Yeah, it's a hard one to know, to look back, actually.
Do you know what? I think you're right, and you're put in a position where it creeps up on you, and I'm not sure anybody has the emotional intelligence to see what's happening to them and put yourself in two different mindsets,
Yeah,
as you say. So
yeah.
yeah, I just,
And the person that's doing it doesn't want you to know. They don't want you to
of course
leave.
they don't.
They don't come up to you and say, right, I'm going to abuse you now. They are really wanting you to stay until they've got the next one lined up. So
Yeah.
they will do whatever is necessary. My ex-partner did whatever was necessary to make sure that I was not going to go until she was ready. So yeah, that it's yeah, it's not a known quantity. So yeah, That's how I
Yeah,
feel about my particular situation.
absolutely. How how is this impacting your day-to-day life now, other than obviously you're having huge amounts of support from different domestic abuse bodies? What what kind of outside of that, how's day-to-day life currently? You've spoken about nightmares and insomnia, which I
Yeah,
can only
yeah. I
imagine.
mean, yeah, I haven't slept through the nights except for about 3 times since November the 8th when our marriage ended, and so that has a material physical impact on me.
Of course.
And so I have nightmares that are very sort of distressing, and I have lots of panic attacks and anxiety attacks. I didn't know what the word anxiety was before this was really revealed to me. Although I realised that I have been somebody that has suffered from anxiety in the past anyway. I just hadn't characterised it as that. So I find it very difficult to concentrate, to focus. I had a month off work. My employer is really, really supportive, thankfully. My sickness um, is up and down with work, and so they are really working with me to make sure that those are classed as reasonable adjustments because I have symptoms of complex PTSD. So, my GP's supportive to talk to my employer. I've been really open and honest with my employer because I can't sort of operate it any other way. And day to day, I have, anxiety attacks, and I just worry about everything. I have lots of periods of rumination and beating myself up about, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. And so I'm running a house, looking after myself in a full-time job, and I've got a dog, and looking after my child and trying to provide a safe space for my child when I don't feel safe in myself. It's really, really hard. And so some days are easier than others. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs. And I don't quite know how I'm managing actually. I just manage very much from day to day, and I don't make plans. Um, and now what I'm my my go-to support is to reach out to people because that's where I get the most support because I had become so isolated. Um, yeah, and if I need to just stop, I just have to stop and go for a sea swim. That's where I find my calm space now.
Oh, nice. I like that. It's a good job you don't live where I do, because you see swim would be a really long way away.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. It's not too far away. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Can you um can you get your head around what might be the lasting impact of this, or do you feel that it's too soon to to say what you're going to be left with afterwards? Obviously, you've mentioned PTSD, which is something that that seems to stick around for good, although albeit kind of manageable. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm facing a lot of legal abuse, so my legal costs are astronomical, and I had an inheritance from my grandparents that I'm now starting to think that she actually just wanted me to not have that inheritance because it will all be gone. So I will be in debt. I've not really been in debt before in my life, not significantly, and I potentially will be in tens and tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt just in order to be able to get the 50-50 equal split of our marital pot that she said, no, we don't need lawyers, we don't need solicitors, we can just do it ourselves. At which I realised
yeah,
that was a big red flag, and I know that that's a common red flag. So I will be
yeah.
probably financially destitute and in debt. I don't. I the lasting hallmark impression of this will. I I hope that it will mean that I find a place in myself that I haven't accessed before that is stronger and more resilient. I don't feel like that is possible yet. I know that people talk about post-traumatic growth. It's not something that I've currently experiencing. I don't know when that comes. I certainly know who my friends are. I certainly know more about, the patterns of my behaviour uh, that have not been healthy. But sadly, ongoing, because we share our child, the abuse is going to continue. So I'm going to need to find a way in which I can, I suppose, be my own advocate internally, so that when that abuse continues, because my ex will never stop being an abuser, how to manage that. So that's my long-term goal of how I'm going to deal with this, is just knowing how to deal with that ongoing abuse. Um, and I
Do
hope that yeah, the PTSD symptoms reduce over time with the right help, and I'm getting the right help with trauma support. Um, so I'm hoping that that's going to help me.
Sure. I mean, you you talk about not feeling that you're in the post-traumatic growth period, but the amount of bravery you show by coming on to speak and help other people who are in this position is to me absolutely incredible. And I hope one day you'll recognise that in yourself, because I'm aware that somebody else telling you isn't you believing it necessarily. But yeah, I think it's incredible.
Well, I do
What?
I do hope to help other people. I have met some other survivors of domestic abuse, and I've used my home as a place for us all to meet up post the domestic abuse group meetings that we've had, so we can all keep in touch with each other. And I really want other women to know what this is like. And I've been keeping a daily log of everything that's happened to me since November, and I just wouldn't want anybody to have to experience this. It's if I can help anybody, that's the main thing. And I do have friendships now with other uh, abuse survivors, and we help each other. And it's so validating to be in a room or in the company of people that really understand that domestic abuse isn't man hits woman. That's really
No,
validating. Yeah,
absolutely not. Where so you talked about some of the domestic abuse services that have helped you. Are you able to talk a bit more about? Obviously, I don't want you to disclose the local
yeah,
people that have helped, because we want to keep you anonymous. But
sure.
are you able to talk about the kind of national support that's available to people that they are places where they might be able to go, where you found real help?
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. I've used the National Domestic Abuse Helpline a lot, because I wanted to speak to other women who were also speaking to mainly women, to kind of piece together what it's like to be on the receiving end of abuse from a woman, because that's been quite, I've found that I have felt, oh God, nobody will believe me. My ex-partner is extremely charming and charismatic and well-groomed and well-educated and speaks with a very nice, calm voice and does not look the part at all, and is a thriving businesswoman and entrepreneurial and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to talk to people who had a kind of overview of that this can happen with women. So I've accessed that, and I've also accessed an agency which is a LGBTIQI agency as well, that has a domestic abuse arm to it. Again, because there are subtle nuanced things to do with, within a kind of not heterosexual relationship. And I've also utilised the NHS. So my GP has helped enable me to get help from my local community mental health team. So I've been supported by them. So, and TalkWorks, so through the NHS. And actually it was on going through the GP and getting help from the TalkWorks team and trying to find out whether I would be suitable for EMDR therapy. The TalkWorks person that I saw said, no, you're too traumatized. You're in the trauma already. You're still experiencing this trauma. EMDR needs to happen when you're safe. So, and that then catapulted me into the more local domestic abuse agencies where I live that specialise in trauma support. So I think that the different, and I also use the Samaritans a lot. So probably daily. At the very beginning, I was calling the Samaritans daily and all through the night, because the night times have been, the most devastating in some ways, to be alone in the house on my own, and frightening and scary. So they've been extremely good, as have the crisis team within the NHS that's through the community mental health. So I've used the crisis team as well. So that was through the local number that I've had access to.
Crikey. I mean,
Yeah, it's a lot. I know, and I think
that's that's
the
a lot.
the amount of money that has been spent on me, on my support, is is awful, that one person on the planet has kind of contributed to my need to access all of these services for free. It's shocking. It's shocking that can be the case, because it's all being funded by government or whatever, different public sector agencies. It's shocking.
I guess that that's what they're there for.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a shame that they have to be there for that purpose,
yeah,
but they wouldn't exist if there weren't people needing those services. So
yeah. And I'm really grateful that they've been there for me, and I'm really grateful that they're there for the women that I know and that I continue to meet. We're all extremely, extremely grateful, because without that, I think there would be much more tragedy. That's the reality of it. The tragedy is that
really,
suicide for me has felt like a what's the word, a more available option to me than actually getting over this. And so I have struggled with that a lot. And so that's crazy, but that's the reality. And the reality of that is that does become the case for some women, sadly.
of course, of course. Do Again, this might be difficult to answer, but when you look back, did was the abuse progressive? Did it become kind of start with, for example, financial abuse and move forward and become bigger?
Yeah, it
Um,
did.
yeah,
It has exponentially grown. So it
yeah,
was sort of slight little jokey digs, uh,
yeah,
sort of slight not infidelities, but sort of the suggestion of infidelities, so not actual infidelities. And then there was an infidelity, and so it sort of ramped up. And I think as my ex became more stressed and where I wasn't being the right partner, and I wasn't staying as controlled as I ought to have been, then I became more critical. I was then causing her more angst that I wasn't towing the line. So then what she had done before didn't work. So then the abuse started to sort of change up and get more overt, because actually it just wasn't working anymore. What had happened, buying me something or kissing me or loving me wasn't quite adequate enough to shut me up, to keep me from saying, well, actually, I don't like it when you flirt with other women behind the bar, and that's not appropriate. And I just wasn't being quiet enough. And I think that, yeah, so when things were not working out for her in whatever way she was trying to get what she needed, the abuse sort of escalated, and it certainly escalated when she sadly she had a death in her family, and that sort of seemed to kind of create in her, I think, a sense of more loss of control when she lost this particular family member, and she then felt that she needed to control more, and that I think that that escalated the sort of the type of abuse that I was getting, it got worse. And then the financial abuse has kicked in more since the separation, where she's holding the threat of not paying for things towards our house over my head, and that's a very overt and very cogent way of keeping me quiet. Like, you know, if you do anything to rock the boat, then I will just stop paying towards the mortgage, and then I lose my home. So, you know, they're very tangible, real threats. Whilst that threat is instilled in me, it does its job. It works. So I still live with that, sadly.
Yeah, of course. Are there things that you think that could be put into place? I'm thinking post separation and sort of during the divorce procedure. Are there things that you think could be put in place by the government to stop post separation abuse to the extent that you've experienced it?
I've thought about this a lot, and
Oh, you might have done.
yeah, and I'm certainly no expert. All I know is from my point of view, what could be done. But, you know, sort of solicitors are great. They're there to protect people, but they're also there to do a job and make money. So I've had to rely on solicitors because my ex would not engage in anything other than just giving me half the house, and that was all she said. No, you can have half the house and that's it. So I wasn't in a position to know where to go. And I think it would be great if solicitors were able to distinguish, well, that's, you know, from the very get-go, what is lawful and what is legal, and then not waste time writing lots of letters. So there is always this sort of back and forth. And I only found out recently that all of the letters that these solicitors write to each other, they never get put into bundles that end up in court. The judges never see them. They're just letters between one solicitor and another solicitor. So those letters where these people might say horrible things about you, they don't ever get seen. And I think that's really important, that solicitors should be really clear about that. That when you can see that somebody is wasting the time and just writing these kind of letters about, well, can I come and get my stuff from the greenhouse? And when are you going to let me to come and get things out of the greenhouse? And I want to come and get things out of the greenhouse. You know, it's just a constant wasting of time. So I think solicitors would be it would be served well if solicitors were able to get training in this sort of financial and legal abuse. I'm sure some are. My solicitor was recommended to me by a particular author of narcissistic and domestic abuse books. So I was put in touch with somebody who knows the landscape, but that still doesn't stop me having to spend thousands of pounds. And I think that from social workers to the police to the lawyers, there needs to be this joined upness of when you can see that actually something is becoming litigiously messy, that there's no reason for it. You know, I think that would, I don't know, help some people if they knew that the people that were there to support them really understood what coercive control was about. And there are people out there who want to train, you know, and can do that sort of training. And I have had reason to contact the police myself and not make a statement, but to record matters. And I know that this coercive control behaviour doesn't meet the thresholds that the police require at all. So whilst coercive control is within the Domestic Abuse Act, the thresholds that you have to meet in order to even get to court or even for it to be recognised are so high, the bar is so high. I wouldn't have met any of those, so there's no point in me raising any allegation, which I think is sad, really, a sad reflection that act there is there, and that coercive control is part of that act, and yet it's not fully known how to utilize that element of the act fully for all of those people that are being affected by it, unless it's really overt. Yeah.
Crikey, there's a lot of work still to do, isn't there? You know, it's
There
as
is
you say.
there's an awful lot of work, and one I wouldn't like to say it was all awful. My son's school have been amazing. I think teachers are probably incredible. They must see this sort of thing all the time, and so my son's school has been really supportive to him and to me, and so you know there must be some really great work going on in some schools to be able to look out for signs of what this sort of thing that's happening, and how it's affecting kids. So that I want to, don't want to make out like everything's really awful, because I have had experience of where things can be put in place, and when they're put in place, they really work. They really work. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh, well, that's a really good news. Um, Rachel, we're coming to the end of our time together. Is anything that you want to say before we leave this conversation?
I would just like to say the thing that's been the most helpful to me is knowing that there are other people out there who are experiencing feelings of being completely alone. And I've been listening to podcasts from all around the world from different people saying, you're not alone, you're not alone, you're not alone, at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. Put the podcast on. You're not alone. You're not going mad. This abuse is happening to you. If your body feels tense and anxious at the thought of your ex or your partner or whatever, that your body is telling you something. Listen to it. Really listen to it, because your instincts know what's happening, whilst you might be told that it isn't happening, and your brain is trying to tell you it's not happening because you're not safe, but you're not alone. And sadly, there are lots of people out there who are experiencing this, but reach out to whoever you need to get support, because it is there, and it's a lonely place. So try to find company. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Those were brilliant words, and you're definitely not alone. There are so many support agencies available. As Rachel mentioned, the Samaritans through the night. If you need some comfort and some support, these agencies are there to provide that. And as Rachel said, you're definitely not going mad. Unfortunately, we work with these people who are victims, survivors of domestic abuse all of the time, and it doesn't always look like a punch. It's quite often much more subtle than that. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you giving us your time and telling your story. Thank you.
You're welcome, and it's been nice to be able to do this, so thank you.